Welcome to today's presentation presented by the Bella Vista Salesforce user group in Sydney, Australia. Today I'm going to talk about how we can enhance flows with some components from unofficial SF, and those two components are the data table and the flow button bar. My contact details are on this slide. If you wish to contact me, feel free. The resource that we'll be using will be unofficialsf.com. We'll go there in a minute. There is a data table component there that we will use, and also the flow button bar, which is included in the prerequisites for the data table. And just a reminder that Certified CRM, my online training organization, we've got a special on our courses that we've extended until the end of January. So if you're quick, you can still jump on board for only $10 a course. If you miss that, it's only $20, so still very affordable. Okay, let's jump to Chrome, and here we are at unofficialsf.com on the welcome page. The components that we want are flow, and they're contained under this menu. Just a quick background on unofficialsf.com. It is an unofficial, it's not a Salesforce product or a service. It's run by, largely by Alex Edelston, but with also other contributors. Now, Alex has got an interesting background. He's been with Salesforce for about the last 4.5 years and is now Vice President of Product Management. It's got an interesting background though. If we go right to the very bottom, you can see that he was one of the original designers of Microsoft Exchange, worked on Product Manager at Netscape, and also worked in Link2Me as well, one of the pre-Google search engines. So a wealth of experience and background in product management, and as now looks after Flow Builder, Orchestrator, Einstein, Next Best Action, and Flow for Slack as well. Another contributor to Unofficial SF is Eric Smith. Eric's a technical architect at Gears CRM and is the author of the data table component. So huge thank you to Eric for that. Narinder Singh is another contributor to Unofficial SF, a prolific blogger at Force Panda, the group leader of the Berlin Administrators Group, and 2 times MVP. So he's another significant contributor over here at unofficialsf.com. Okay, so let's take a look at the flow menu, and there's a number of resources here. The part that we're interested in is we want to extend flow. So we're looking at screen components. There are also installable actions, some developer tools, and also some background about Flow Orchestrator there as well. But we'll go straight to the screen components. There's quite a number of them here, and you'll see different contributors. Now, just one thing that I'd like to mention here, if I scroll down towards the bottom, you'll see that things like the flow button bar, which we will be using today, is now part of the Screen Flow Components base pack. So we don't need to install that separately. There's an icon picker that's also part of there, and several others. And you'll also see that some products start to become obsolete as well. So just watch out for those. This is an earlier version of Eric's data table, and so is this one here. So you'll see that some of these start to become obsolete. Maybe they've been picked up by Salesforce and are now part of the base product, which is what we hope a lot will happen to a lot of these tools. So they'll be much easier for people to utilize. Okay, so the one we're interested in is the data table. Current version is 3.3.2. This one was built by Eric Smith. Thank you, Derek, for that. We'll scroll down, right down near the bottom to the installation steps. There's a lot of documentation. Here we go. And the installation step takes us off to another link. And here we are. Okay, so we're ready to install the data table, but there are two components that we need first. So let's open that in a new tab, the Flow Actions Base Pack. So data table uses that, and also the Screen Components Base Pack. Now, we didn't actually need to open two windows because they are both on the same page here. So we'll close that and we'll close those other links as well. Okay, so the first one is the Flow Actions Base Pack. So we need to install this first. If you're using a developer org or production environment, use this link. If you have a sandbox attached to your corporate environment, then you can use this link. Basically, click on that, go through the installation. When it's finished and it's installed, and you can look up setup and have a look at installed packages to confirm it is installed, then you can come back and install the second one, which is this Flow Screen Components. And again, if you're using a developer org or a production environment, install the first one. Okay, once we have both of those, we're then ready to install the data table package itself. And again, we've got links for production or developer orgs and sandboxes. So if you're using a developer org or a Trailhead Playground, you would use this first link. Off you go, install that component and then come back. There is also a permission set that you need to set. I think if you install for admins, then these will already be set for your user account. Okay, so we've done all the pre-work. Now we're ready to have a look at these components and see what they do. So I'll jump into a developer org. Now, the example I'm going to be working on is to delete leads. So we have an existing flow to delete leads that uses both the data table and the button component as well. This is what the result of what we're going to build. Okay, I won't go through it all in detail right now, but basically we get a bunch of leads, display them, decide whether or not you've got any to delete. If you do, we'll display a message to confirm, and then off we'll go and we'll delete those records. So it's reasonably straightforward, but the nitty-gritty is in this screen component. That's the bit that we're going to look at today. So let's run this so that we can see what I'm talking about. Okay, so it runs the get records on the lead and displays all of the lead records. There are 37. Okay, let's verify that. Here's our list view of all open leads, and we verify we have 37. Check our filter. We're showing all leads. Okay, back to our flow. What I can do here is I can check the boxes on the left and decide which ones I want to delete. Now, a few things that we can do in the table besides just doing that is we can sort them by column. Any column that we like, they're all sortable. And you notice that some of them we have icons as well. And there's also the ability to wrap text where the heading or the component field, the field details, is too long for the space. We can wrap that, or we can clip it off if it's too long. So what I might do is go down the bottom here, and I've got widgets limited. I've got 1, 2, 3 leads. So I'm going to select those 3 leads and delete them. So now I've got a delete button here with an icon. I've also got a finish. So if I want to quit, I can get out now. But I'll select delete. Now we've got a confirmation, and again, we've got a chance to bail out here if we want to. Otherwise, we go ahead and delete. Now, just before we do that, remember we had 37 leads in total, so we're just proving that it does work. We hit delete. Those leads have been deleted. We've now got 34. Let's refresh this to verify 34. So those 3 leads were deleted. And if we were to go and look in the recycle bin, we would see those 3 leads there, and we could restore them back again. Okay, so that's what the flow does. Before we jump into that one, I'll create a new flow, a new screen flow, just to show you the ins and outs of the data table and how we use it. So this is going to be a screen flow because we want to guide users through selecting the records. We're happy with auto layout. Okay. The first thing that I want to do is get the lead records. So I'll do a get records, get leads, object is leads. And the only thing I do want to do here is to make sure that they are not converted. So I'll check that the is converted is false, because if the lead is already converted into a contact, we won't normally see it on a lead display page, but we don't want to go and delete those. I can sort those if I wish into ascending order by name, for example. How many records? I'm going to get all of the records that are available. There won't be too many. Excuse me. Okay, so the next thing that we want to do now that we've got those records is we want to display something. So we'll select a screen. We'll give it a label. Display leads. Not too concerned about the header and footer at the moment. And now that I've installed the data table, it appears here as a custom component. Remember, you have to have my domain configured for these to work as well. So I can drag the data table over onto the canvas, and then we'll go through and configure that. Okay, so I'm going to call this leads table. I'm selecting records from the lead object, and then it will then show me any DML operations that I've done on leads already in this flow, and that's the one I want, is our get leads. Okay, so the data table is going to load the records from here, from the result of that. There's lots of options here, and I won't go through all of them. Now we've got some choices on how we format our table. So we can display a header, and we can call this, we can customize this leads to delete. We can give it an icon if we wish. We'll just take the standard lead icon, but you can search and select a different one. I'm not going to restrict the number of records to display, but you could. It'll have a border around the table. And there are some other options here that you can require that at least one of the rows is selected before you go on. Okay, so if you check that, when they're viewing the table, they must select at least one record on the left-hand side before they can go on to the next page. Or you can disallow row selection altogether and just simply display it. Or you can have a single row selection, which means it becomes a radio button option. You can only choose one of the options presented. So you can either have multiple, you can select multiple options, which you would want in this example because we want to select multiple leads, or you can have a single selection. The links on the field names that are displayed in the table can be clickable links on the names. So there'll be a blue underscore, and if you click that, you can open that in another window and go and have a look at that record. Maybe you want to verify that that's the correct one. Or you can open it in the same tab. Okay, there's nothing else here that I normally change. The next part to configure is the columns that will display in this data table. So it's loading up the field details from the lead object, and I normally just use the pick your table options from here, your columns, and now I can go through and select which columns from the lead object that I want to display. Well, I'm certainly going to want the name, so full name. I might want the email address. I might want the phone. Might take the mobile phone as well. And I might want their company name. That should give me a good idea of which ones I want, and I can move that order around. Okay, if I'm happy with those, maybe I can get the date created. Create a date. So I know how new they are. Okay, so here's our fields. This is what they're going to look like. Now, I mentioned earlier that we can do things like we can crop or wrap the text on these names. So I might want to wrap that company name in case it's quite large, and what that looks like is it wraps it to a second line there. Full name, I'm happy with that as it is. Email probably needs to be a little bit longer. Maybe the phone can be shorter. So you can play around with these fields and make them whatever size that you want. The last one's a little bit tricky. You've got to kind of drag it across and then you can readjust it. Now, other things that you can do here, if you don't like the label that it's presented for the column, you can edit that. So you can change the label. So if I just want to call that mobile, or I want to call it cell phone, I can change that. You can select an icon for it. So we could select, I think there's an icon for phone. Let's just do that one. Okay, so now we've got a little icon for there for the headings itself. You might want to do the same on email. There's one for email. Maybe we'll stick with the utility icons, which are little grey ones. Okay, so you can do things like that. Takes a bit of trial and error to get the actual column width right when the full page displays. So you'll get used to looking at this total here and working out what's the optimum size for your page. As you adjust the width of these, you'll see that the numbers down here change. And if you want to get them, like if you want to make this one 185 instead and you want to bump this one up to 220, then there's a button here that will reset those to the nearest 5 pixels for you. Okay, so we've got 1015 total width of our page. Okay, so we can say done. The wizard's finished and we can close that window. So far, we've configured everything that we need to display that data. So we can say done, save, give it a new name. So we'll call this one lead demo. Demo of the data table. And let's run that to see the result. Okay, so here we are. So now we've got a data table that displays those records. And as you can see, I mentioned earlier about the width of it. So you could make that a little bit wider, that table. So you can adjust that to suit yourself. Those icons that we provided for the phone and the email are presented at the top here. The icon for the table and the name for the table are up here as well. You also notice that heading for mobile, that was mobile phone, has been changed to what we edited it to be as well. And we've got the word wrap on our company field. Now we could have made that one a bit wider. You can see it's a bit narrow. So we could have pushed that out to be a bit wider. If we do that in our flow, in our configuration, when we display it here, it will always go back to that configured size. Okay, so that's how we get the data table to display. Now, what can we do with it? Obviously, we can select buttons down here, and if we wish, we can select the entire set as well. So there's our controls that we can do here. Close that and go back to our flow. Let's just have a look at some of those other configurations of the data table. One of them I mentioned is a single row selection. If we select that, save and run, you'll see the difference here. If you only want a single record to be selected, then you can use that. Okay, so now you can only select one or the other. Simple as that. Okay. The other option is that you could disallow row selection altogether. So maybe it's just a table that you just simply want to display. Maybe you're just showing how many related opportunities there are for an account, and you don't actually want the user to select anything. You just want to display them. Then you're probably better off to turn that off, because there is nothing that they can do with those records in that example. So rather than confuse them by looking as if you can select something, it'd probably be worthwhile turning that off. Okay, the next thing is we want to look at how do we use those records that we've selected. So what we'll do is we'll create a little screen component. We'll call this one display values, and we're going to display some returned values from the data table. So one of the things that we want to know is how many records did we get back? Or how many records did we select? So here's our screen component, our data table. And here we can see the return values in this output. So number of rows selected. Let's grab that. Let's call it. Okay, that's a useful one. What else do we get back? Number of rows edited. Okay, I didn't mention earlier, but you can actually edit values in that data table as well. So there's another setting. We'll go back and have a look at that. And you also get a collection of those selected rows as well. And that's where we'll use that one in the delete leads, because that's our collection of records. So like a box with a whole bunch of records in there for all of those ones that we've ticked. That's what a collection is. Okay, it's just a group of records that you've selected somewhere. So that's a useful one that we'll use as well. These other ones, these wizard ones, I don't touch those. They're internal things, I think. But they're probably the two main ones that we'll use: the number of rows selected, the collection of records selected, and also the number of records that have been edited. And there's a collection of those as well. Okay, so if we save that, this time when we run it and we get to this page, we're just going to get a number which is going to show how many leads we selected. So run that and load up our flow, grab the data table, format it, and bingo, display. Oops. Okay, so we've left it on single selection at the moment. So obviously our result is only going to be 1, isn't it? Number of rows selected equals 1. All right, let's go back to our, which flow builder are we? Not that one, this one. Let's go back to our table, edit that, switch it back to allowing multiples. Why don't we turn on require while we're there, save that, close that one off, run that again. Okay, and this time, if we don't select any, there was an error message displayed there because there we go, there it is. This is a required entry, at least one must be selected. Okay, let's select 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 5, 6. Next, 6 rows were selected. So you can see that value of that number of selection being used there. Okay. One more thing while we're still doing the data table, I mentioned that you could configure columns for editing. So let's go back into our table. Our company field was a bit small, remember? We'll make that a bit wider. It's now 284. Let's round that up, round it down. Okay. Let's say that we want them to be able to edit either the mobile field or the other field. So allow edit on that one, allow edit on that one, and we can also allow filter. Let's put a filter on company name. Okay, so when we're in editing, we'll be able to filter the company and we'll be able to edit and change the phone number and mobile numbers. Done, save, run. Let's check on how we're going for time. We're about 30 minutes in. So we've nearly finished on the data table component, and we'll jump to our pre-built flow and we'll have a look at the component for the buttons in there. Okay, so we said we want to be able to set a filter on company. So filter the column company. Let's put in Burlington. Okay, and it now filters and just shows us the Burlington textiles. And we've also now got the edit capability, so we can put in a number there. You can see it's highlighted and the save buttons come up. We can edit this one. It's highlighted. We can edit this one. And we hit save, and those records are now saved for us, those changes. Okay, and if we were to go back, put our even without filtering our Burlington, I know what's happened. We haven't gone back and reread the leads table, so if we refresh, now we should hopefully find, oh no, we're not doing any saving this, that's why it's just a display. Okay, but if we were saving the records, then those values would be updated for us. Okay, so that's what a data table looks like. It's very handy when you want to select products, for example, for an opportunity. So you could use this as a product selector, and you could pass some parameters across to trim down the number of products that are shown to a salesperson at a particular stage of the opportunity, depending upon certain characteristics of that company or of that opportunity. And then you could allow them to select, and they could go tick, tick, tick down here and select the products they want and add them to an opportunity. There's many, many uses where you can use this for. Maybe you just want to use it as a selector and then go on and edit the record, or to be able to do a quick, easy edit on a record, as you've seen you can do here. So lots and lots of uses for that. Okay, so that's the data table component. Let's close that one off and go back to the complete example. So this is one that I prepared earlier, and it's got the same get records. So we get the lead records, make sure they're not converted, sort them by name, get all the records, automatically store them so that we can bring them into our display table. Okay, so there's our table with our lead using get leads. We've configured the columns, we've got a header, we've got a label for the table using the standard lead icon. No restrictions here. We do show navigation links. Okay, and we've configured columns. Exactly the same, won't go into that one again. But underneath on the same page, we've now used this flow button bar component. So it's down here in the custom section as well. And flow button bar, it's this one here. So I've dragged that on the page, and then let's have a look at the configuration on this. It's pretty simple, pretty easy to use, and it's quite nice. So we give it a name like every other component on the page, and we can create a new button. So if you don't have one, there'll be an option here for new. Let's go through that. Drag another one on, and you can see how that works. Okay, so you can add a new button. Here it is. You give it a label, give it a value, which we're going to use later when we determine what they've clicked on. We use that value to determine which particular button they clicked. We can use different variants of the button. So the green one is success. This one is a destructive button in text format. This one's got a background color. So there's all those options, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 different options. And you can also select icons for them as well. Okay, so that's kind of cool. So you can have a button, the color you want with the text you want, and you can also have an icon on it as well. Get rid of that one, go back to this one. So what I've done here, and I can go back and edit this, is I've given it a label of delete. The value is delete. I've used the success button to make it green, and I've used the utility icon called delete to put that little icon on the page, and I can select whether or not I want it on the left or on the right hand side. And in the and then I can use it for navigation. So it's a navigation button that's going to help you navigate through a screen, or you can use it for selection. And you can either have it horizontal or vertical, and you can align it left, right, or center. In this case, I've aligned it on the right because I want it on the right-hand side of the page. Now, because I've got that button, I don't need the standard Salesforce Next Finish buttons. So what I've done there is just click here on the very top of, so we go back to the actual first screen. What I've done here is I've turned off the header and I've turned off the footer, so I don't show those anymore because I don't need to use those, even though we've got some new features now where we can have a custom label for these buttons. I'm not using that. Okay, so I've turned those off. Now we get to a decision. We've displayed our screen, we've got our button there. We need to work out, okay, what did the user select? Did they bail out and hit finish? Because there was a finish button. If they did, then we'll just quit. If they didn't, then we want to go through and delete. So we'll do a decision and we'll have a look at the table actions value, which is what I call that button action. If it equals delete, then we're going to go down this route. Otherwise, we're just going to finish. Okay. So if they selected the delete button, I'm going to go here. Now, users being the way they are, sometimes they do crazy things. So we want to make sure that if they've selected delete, have they actually selected any leads to delete? So rather than make that field compulsory from the table point of view, like we did earlier, I'll let them do stupid stuff. So if they get to here and they haven't selected any, then there's a route that we can take there. So what we're going to do is we're going to have a look at our leads table and look at that output field from the number of records that have been selected. And if that's greater than 0, it means they have selected some. And we want to go down the yes route. Okay, so yes, they've selected some. Okay, next screen, confirm. So we're just going to display, please confirm you wish to delete. And then we're displaying that number. And that's that number that came back from the table, the number of records that they selected. And we've got another flow button bar, exactly the same as the other one. The delete, same configuration, exactly the same. Okay. So if they've said yes, then we go down this route to delete leads. Okay, so this is a delete records element. Pretty simple. It takes a record collection and deletes those records. So we already have that output collection from the table. So remember when we selected multiple records, one of those outputs was the collection of records, like that big box of records that came back from that table. So whatever they've ticked on, those records have been put into a box that's called a collection, and we can use that here in our delete records. So from our table, the output, which was those selected records, that's what we want to put in here to the delete records component. And that will get rid of them for us. Awesome, done. That's it. End of flow. Let's run that one more time. Select the records that you want to delete. Okay, let's do our filter. Oh, I haven't filtered this one. Okay, oh, it doesn't matter. We can do it this way. Let's go all the Burlington ones. Here's a whole bunch of them. We'll select the first one. We'll hold down Shift and select the last one. Okay, so we've got about a dozen selected there. We'll go delete. It says, do you want to delete these 13 records? Baker's dozen. Yes. So we're deleting 13. If we go back here, originally we had 34. We should have the magic number of 21. Okay. And if we finish our flow, it'll just load again that page, and now you can see that we've got 21. Bingo. It all worked perfectly. Okay, so just to recap, we've installed 2 components from our unofficial sf.com. Just switch screens back to the second slide. Okay, so we went to unofficialsf.com. We installed the data table, which had those 2 prerequisites, the screen components and the flow components, which contained our flow button bar, and we're able to put those together to create quite a neat flow that utilized both of those components. If I select the right screen, lost it somewhere. For some reason I've lost that page. Maybe PowerPoint's taken it over. No? Okay. Well, I think we've finished there. If anybody has any inquiries, you can go right back to that very first slide at the front where my contact details were. I've lost the PowerPoint one as well. I hope you've enjoyed this, and thank you to the Bella Vista Developers Group for affording me the opportunity to present this today. So good luck, and good luck with your flows. Thank you.